Hello everyone. I hope you're enjoying the weekend as I do. On my end, it's super sunny. This today I'm back since last weekend I didn't do the stream. Uh, as always, feel free to ask questions, subscribe, hit the share button, and stuff like that. That's always good. And yeah, hopefully you can learn something today and in the future. Mm, Today, yeah, last 2 weeks I had a romantic idea about finishing up the Rust query modules, but as always, when you start implementing stuff, it gets more complicated than you expected. But yeah, I did make some progress. In general, my idea was to, I mean, the idea now is to cover project structure and testing properly. Actually, I did some work on that end, and I'll comment on that. And also, it took more than expected, but I finally sorted out the, let's say, development environment for the Rust and my Vim setup. So I'll comment on that as well. Actually, I'll start with that. And then later on, I'll comment on the project structure of these Rust query modules, and also talk about testing a bit. And that's it. Today, it's gonna be quick again, since yeah, I still have to decide how to do the tests properly and how to organize the project. But we'll come to that. That's, I think, more or less it. In terms of the time, it will take under an hour, I hope. And yeah, do we have some comments? No. I'll also let me snooze my phone to not distract us. Okay, let's jump in. So first, the setup. So let's jump in. We have here a couple of I wrote down a couple of to-dos that will give us the final implementation, but we still have a lot of work on that side. Let's jump into the project. So in terms of the config, my biggest issue was that I basically compiled the project here, and then I had to go back and I did a bunch of stuff on the formatting side manually. So Cargo also has the FMT command that formats the code and stuff like that. But all these things could be integrated inside Vim, and the nice thing is that for all these things, there could be a plugin called Conqueror of Completion could be used. It's called COC Vim. So this is the plugin for the Vim I used. It basically gives a lot of functionalities out of the box, basically for all programming languages. I mean, almost all. And there are also extensions that could be used for Rust. And let me quickly show how to do that. So if you run, if you see the top left corner, so it's, once you install the plugin, the whole Conqueror of Completion, then you can install some extensions here. And so basically how this works, the Conqueror or TOTS is the client for the language server, and then language server gives you all these capabilities like autocomplete, navigation, and stuff like that. And in order to do that, in order to have that, an extension has to be installed, and that extension is called RLS. That stands for Rust Language Server. So if you run this from Vim, that will install this extension. And also, it didn't ask me now, but under the hood, that extension also installs the language server for Rust, and that's installed somewhere on the system, somewhere in the Vim configuration. So all that is installed under the hood. So let's quickly close this. But basically, what that gives you is the RLS integration. It's visible here. And let's say that sorry, no, edit. Let's change something just to. Why this doesn't work now? Okay, this is actually working. So it says now, the Rust compiler says now unused variable X. So it's visible immediately after you do some code. If I install this, it doesn't work still, but okay. Okay. Let's test that somehow with something better. Let's do make graph vertices iterator. So now we have that function here, and it says ls, that stands for language server. And if I take this, so it immediately gives me the function signature of this function. And now here you see that the function accepts graph, result, and the memory parameters. That's why. Somehow this got lost, but okay, that's fine. Also, what is nice is that you can navigate. So if you see, I don't know if that's visible, you can see that this like function name is highlighted now, and that basically means that Vim knows that as a symbol, as a function, and you can, for example, jump there. There is also some keyword bindings on my keyboard. So for example, if I click here G and then D, I'll jump directly to the definition of this function, which is very nice. And that's not possible by default. You need to have like a language server that has an index of all these functions and positions in files. That's something which is possible to use and make, and it's very convenient when you code. In addition to that, let's say that we, I don't know, have this as an example of something, of a code, and also we, I don't know, we do some for loop in 10 something like that, and then println test. This is now a bit, let's say this code is not formatted at all, but if I type format, that's also the TOTS command that will basically use the TOTS extension to format the code. If I hit enter here, I've immediately formatted the code, which is very nice. I don't have to jump to another terminal and like do stuff here, which is not convenient at all, and it's faster as well. So we don't need this. And one last thing when it comes to this, you can also like build stuff directly from Vim, which is also nice. But yeah, and that's done by just running make build. So that will build the project, and that's like a standard make command in Vim. That's actually not. I think that's not. You don't need the Conqueror for this. If I run a command here, you immediately start compiling the project, and it gives you all these compile output messages. If I go back here, which is good here, that you have the quick fix stuff from Vim as well. If I type errors, that will bring me the quick fix window, and here we don't have errors, but we have the warnings. We have the warnings about unused functions, and basically the idea is to fix that as soon as possible with the testing stuff. So all these library functions, we'll test them somehow, and then that will disappear, so we won't have unused functions now. So yeah, basically you can jump on the exact error by just jumping to that, let's say, warning from the quick fix window, and you can position yourself here and then do something about that. Let's say you have a real errors that would help you to debug and to improve, to fix these errors. You can close. This is now a bit Vim, so there is all commands to navigate through the windows, but yeah, I won't cover that now. I think that's about it. More or less, I covered everything. I think that will massively accelerate my workflow with Rust. So I'm happy with the setup as is now. And yeah, let's just compile one more. Oh, of course, we can compile from here. But the only problem here is that I don't have the colored output, and then it's a bit harder to detect issues. But you don't really have to, because as soon as you go back, you will get the same error here, so it's fine. But yeah, I just wanted to show that the project is buildable and everything is working. And let's now just jump to the next topic, which is the project structure and testing. So let me go back here. This is the pull request on the Mage repository, and I put a couple of bullet points here to cover. This is something we'll cover much later when we figure out these two things, because we need a proper structure for testing first and for building the modules, and then everything else will be much easier. Basically, in the previous videos, we covered most of the concepts needed to actually build the library functions, but now we have to really double down on tests and on the structure, and then we can just nail the rest of the functionalities. And then let's start from the testing. So the thing with the testing is that in our case, we actually don't have runtime when we are developing stuff. And what that means is that Memgraph is actually the runtime for the query modules. So we need Memgraph to execute a query module and to get some results back. But when we are developing stuff, we don't necessarily need that runtime. We just need some, especially when you are testing stuff. So in the testing, you usually only need some mock structures that will mimic the things that you need in order to test your code. And the whole point is that we need to develop some mocks of Memgraph, and that will allow us to properly test all possible combinations, all patterns in the code that are important, and also it will accelerate the testing, because you don't need the whole Memgraph, the whole system, to test actually something. It's not. This might not be super critical in this case because we don't have a huge project. But when the project is growing, then you need to decouple stuff and make testing as independent as possible. And then I've did the research a bit how to test these things, and there is a crate called mock all, which is a nice library for testing in Rust. It basically has a bunch of functionalities, but in our case, it's very interesting to include something like this in the testing because we need to mock these. We need to mock Memgraph functionalities. For example, if I go, let me find this. So this is the file. So we have, for example, we have these bindgen generated structures and functions. For example, MGP alloc and all the others. So we have these structs MGP value. And we need to get in our tests, we need to create these MGP values somehow. And the mock all library will hopefully help us with creating the mocks of these, and so that we can inject that in our query module code, and then like build test cases and run test cases against that. I don't have at this point, if you have any ideas and any insights how to actually do that. I don't know how to do that yet. As far as I read and as far as I did the research, I think the mock all has all the capabilities to do that. We just have to implement all these. I mean, you have to implement these mocks properly. The good thing with Rust is all these macros. So you can generate a bunch of these things in the compile time. So all these things can be relatively easily wired for the testing purposes. So that's my plan. My plan is to for the next time to prepare these mocks and do some testing. Basically, that's the best I have so far in terms of the plan. Generate these mocks by using mock all. It has these auto mock traits and attribute, and also some traits and some macros to generate code. All right, that's about it. That's about testing, and let's close this for now. And then the next topic is the project structure. So so far I really hacked when I read all these modules thing. I really hacked a lot in terms of the project structure. But an idea today, I mean not today. The idea is to have that to do that a bit better. Actually, I did some stuff here. I've decoupled these library functionalities into the RSMGP, so Rust Memgraph Procedure module. This is a folder in the source folder that has the module, and then by default, if you create a folder in the source folder, and then in that folder you put the mod.rs file, Rust will automatically detect that as a module, and in that mod.rs file, I've put all the code, which is, let's say, library code, which can be used to develop these query modules. That's for now. That's all just dumped here. We can decouple that further, but for now, I think it's fine. And also, I've created the mgp.rs. That's just including the bindings, the generated bindings file. That's what we had before. I've just put that in the special file, and also ignore some of these warnings, because yes, we have a bunch of that code. I mean, that code, the code that is not used at this point. It will be used in the future, and also non-uppercase globals and non-camel case types. So that's I don't know why the binding library is generating these things like that, because they are against, let's say, standard when it comes to naming stuff. But that's it. That's what it is. I didn't change the bindings as is. I just we have to live with what the bind again is generating. And then what is interesting here, in order to use that, so we have in the mgp file, we have we have included all these things. So that's basically just including whatever is generated, and maybe that's a bit specific now, but in the build rs, we are generating the bindings based on the C header file, and the reason why we just don't copy paste that is that if these things change, if we change something, then the whole thing will be automatically regenerated. So that's the reason why we generate that in the target folder, and then we just include it here, and then we imported the module here by saying pub mod mgp. This is actually something I wanted to also mention. We can just do mod mgp, so that will basically import the mgp module here. But the problem is we also want that to be a public module, at least for now, because we don't have abstractions for all the query modules functionalities. So if we go back into here, so the lib here, this file here is at this point just an example of a module. But since we didn't build everything yet, on some places we are using the bindings, like the unsafe stuff, and that's, for example, here where we just set an error that will, so we are telling in this, by this code, we are telling the memgraph what the error from the module is, and we still don't have a wrapper for that. And by doing that, that will allow us to like incrementally build the whole thing by directly using the unsafe code from the bindgen file. And let me just showcase this a bit. So if we remove the pub here, pub basically means that the whole module import is publicly available when other modules will import that as well. If I run the build here, that will explode because in the lib, for example, in lib file, we are using rsmgp mgp, and that's like private module. It Rust prints that as an error here in a very nice way. So that's why we need pub here for now. And then we have a couple of these use statements. For example, mgp star, it will just import, I'm not sure what's the correct term. If someone knows, maybe you can comment, but let's say include is just adding everything here, but import all the function names, all the symbols that are public. So yeah, by default, as far as I understood in Rust, all these things are private, and you have to explicitly say that things are public. And that's it on that end. So my plan for the future is to further develop this, but first I'll do the testing. I'll figure out how to test first, and then I'll develop the rest of functionalities. That's about the RSMGP module. And then if we go here, that's the exact module. And then we have another problem. So the problem here is that we only have that one module, but in the future, within the Mage repository, we want multiple Rust Rust-based query modules, and we just want to add another file, and based on the RSMGP module, develop other functionalities as easy as possible. The problem we have at this point is that Cargo only allow us, by default, Cargo is building like or executable or a library or a static library or whatever. So, but only one piece of only one binary that will be used for something else. And then we just define here. So basically, as far as I understand, you have to make a decision between executable or a library or something else, but that can only be one. And at this point, we just have like we are having a lib statement here, and we just create another library, which is like a dynamic library based on like C dynamic library, standard dynamic library in C. And that's a problem because we want to add more stuff in the future. At this point, I only have two ideas how to proceed with that. One is basically these Cargo workspaces. So Cargo allows you to build multiple, let's say, projects, multiple libraries inside one Cargo package, is inside one project by adding these workspaces. So basically, this is the structure. So you can have a workspace. So instead of the lib in the cargo.toml file, there we can add workspace and then list all the folders, all the sub projects, let's say, all the workspaces in a project. And that will basically, for each, here is an example directory. So each of these workspaces, each of these members is one folder, and then each has a cargo.toml file and then librs. That's, I think, nice for a lot of use cases where you know exactly how many of these workspaces you will have in the future. So you might decouple your project on, let's say, subcomponents or something, and then just create these workspaces for specific components. The problem I have with this is the boilerplate that is generated, because for each these, let's say that we have that, we'll need to create a cargo.toml file and the lib file and all these things again and again. Ideally, we would just like to add one file and do everything inside. And Rust is very nice as well with the testing, because it has the attributes, the test attribute, which tells what functions are like useful functions and what are the test functions. So I think in reality it's possible to have only one file for everything, and that should be that's I think the best you can have, because everything is concentrated in one file. But yeah, I'll further research this and figure out how to do stuff on that side. An alternative, and I think that's 100% valid, is to expand the build rs file. So I think here it's possible to develop any build structure, any build process in general. The problem is we have to commit on the structure and then build these things to build all the libraries and auto detect stuff and similar. That approach is 100% more flexible if it's possible. I think it is. So I don't see why we couldn't add any arbitrary stuff here, but it's more specific, and whoever will add stuff in the project will have to understand what we did in the build rs file and then comply with that structure, and we need to build documentation for that and all these things. I would rather use something which is in the Rust ecosystem already known, like these workspaces. But yeah, if you have any comments about that, it would be great to, or if anyone is more experienced with that, it would be very helpful to get the thoughts. And that's it for today. I hope this was useful, and I hope you got some ideas where we are, and feel free to send me a comment or a question about these things. Especially especially with this testing stuff and project structure stuff, because once I commit to something, then that has a bunch of implications that are not known at the commit time. So yeah. All right. Let me switch here. That's it for today. Feel free to send me any questions. Feel free also to, let's go back a bit. So this is the Mage is completely open source, and there are multiple pull requests at this point, but in terms of the Rust stuff, feel free to contribute here or add comments or anything. That's all very helpful and very welcome at this point. And yeah, that's about it. I really hope I'll figure out the testing stuff by next time, and then being able to proceed. I think testing is more tricky than the project stuff. Project stuff, we'll figure that out 100%. We have to decide on something and then go with that. The testing is more tricky because it has a bunch of small details that have to be covered. All right, that's it for today. We have the plan for the next time. If you have any suggestions, please send them. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching again. Please subscribe, and yeah, see you next time. Bye bye.